do my legal bit.
We are good. We're recording.
All right, thank you. This open meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call to order the March 25th meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee at 6:30 p.m. I am Nerissa Wallen, chair of the Triton Regional School Committee, and I would like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So we can do the regular tag thing, I guess. So I'm Nerissa Wallen, I chair Triton Regional School Committee, and I will tag Kyle.
I didn't think I'd be first. Hi, I'm Kyle Warren, and I'm the school business administrator with Triton Regional Schools. I'll tag Brian.
All right. I'm Brian. I am the superintendent of Triton. I'll tag Joe.
I'm Joe Perry from Raleigh, vice chairman of the Board of Selectmen. And I'll tag Paul.
Which Paul? We're the only board with 3 Pauls.
3 Pauls. I'm sorry, Paul Mayette.
Paul Mayette, Newbury, what is it now? School committee. And I'll take Paul as well.
I'm Paul Goldner, Triton School Committee, and I will tag Erica.
Hi, Erica Coles-Jacobson, Newbury Finance Committee.
Tag someone.
Jeff, you're up.
Jeff Walker, Selectman Newbury, and I'll tag Peter. I'll tag Michael.
I was gonna say, sometimes
Mike Doyle, Selectman Town of Newbury. I will tag who's left. Sandy gonna be, she gonna, oh, Ronnie.
there you go.
Ronnie Ray Parrott, Salisbury Board of Selectmen. Oh, I'll tag Maureen.
Maureen Heffernan, Newbury Triton School Committee. And let's see, who is there? I think I'm the last person.
No, you haven't tagged me yet.
Cliff, I'm tagging you. Go ahead, Cliff.
Okay, Cliff Pierce, Raleigh Board of Selectmen. And I guess I have no one left to tag, so.
Well, it's me, Alicia Greco, Vice
Okay,
Chair.
I'll tag you then.
Alicia.
Thank you.
So Brian, what was our grade for that?
I gotta say, it was not our best performance. Should we try it again?
Oh,
I think the only one we missed was Peterson Sulo, who was also
Yes, yeah.
Here's Peter.
Oh, you did with audio this time. Awesome.
I had it off. I didn't know.
Oh, good. You had to dial in before. That's why I wasn't sure if we were waiting on you to dial or where you were at.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. For this meeting, the Triton School Committee is convening remotely via Zoom using the information posted on the district's website, identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the district's website with the agenda posting unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything you broadcast will be captured by the recording. All right, well, thank you all for coming tonight on this fine Thursday night, and we'll hop right into it since we've already done introductions. So in the agenda packet were the meeting notes of February 25th. So does anyone have comments or concerns on those notes where they need to be fixed? We don't need a formal vote on this since they're not actually minutes, but obviously we want to have a record that's accurate. All right, seeing none, we can move on to the Triton reopening plans. And this is where I first handed over to Brian.
Yeah.
So
I guess my question is, we've gone over this so much. I think everyone has seen the full plan, and I've put out summary videos for those who don't like to read. And then people comment on Facebook that, gosh, they sure wish it would be in writing. So I guess my question is, are there questions about our plans rather than reiterating it one more time? Just, in summary, we're in the process now. Families are confirming by tomorrow their intentions. We're asking every family to recommit. If they're in remote, staying remote, we're asking them to commit. If they're in hybrid, shifting to full in person, asking them to commit, vice versa. So families commit by tomorrow. We've been planning, obviously, very busy planning. One more full week of planning, getting finalized bus routes and all those logistics. We've got tents going up and furniture being returned to classrooms. Monday, the 5th of April, which is a week from this coming Monday, is a half day, fully remote day. Tuesday, no school. Wednesday, all students grades K through 8 return. And then the high school the following Monday, 5 days, 3 school days, but 5 days later, the high school returns on Monday, April 12th. We then get to try that out, kick the tires for 8 school days, and then April vacation hits. And then, as you all know, in schools, you'll remember, once you hit April vacation, it's just a big blur to the finish line anyway. So I was just downstairs, we were talking about the fact that literally when we closed schools a year and 2 weeks ago, the end of this week, I remember sitting there, because when we first closed, we said, we're just going to close for 2 weeks. And I believe the term was try and get this under control. So a year later, still trying to get it under control. So then, the hope obviously is we stay and don't become a Barnstable or someone like that. You've seen the news. There are certainly places who have not done it well. So we're certainly taking this very seriously, and the safety precautions and all the changes we're making, none of them change the focus on safety first and foremost. So we are ready. We will be even more ready when we open the doors fully. So any questions that you've heard you yourself have, or questions you've heard around town, questions that aren't answered?
Brian, you mentioned tents are going up. What's that about?
Yes. So we purchased tents through COVID funding so that we can expand at the middle school and the high school, there's 5 20 by 40 tents. So if put together, that's a 100 by 20 foot tent. That's large. So it's basically at the middle school, high school is extending cafeteria space outdoors. At the elementary level, we can fit all students in the cafeterias at least 6 feet apart, all facing the same direction. At the middle school, high school, it's just a capacity issue. So obviously the middle school and high school share a single cafeteria. So at the high school, students will be eating some in the cafeteria, some in the bleachers in the gym, some in the auditorium, some in the library, and some outside. At the middle school, it'll be pretty much primarily the cafeteria and outside. And then obviously, if the weather was so bad that kids couldn't make it the 20 feet across without getting so drenched that we couldn't use the tents, then we would use the gymnasium for them as well. So at the middle school, high school, it's primarily from the, whatever it is, 10:45 to 1:15, it's cafeteria space. Outside of that, it's outdoor learning space that can be utilized. There'll be desks and opportunities for other classes to use it. At the elementary, we have 2 20 by 30 tents going up at each school. The tents are there at the middle school, high school now, waiting to get put up. We are expecting the elementary tents next week. So we're not relying on them at the elementary school for anything specifically. It's another opportunity to have outdoor spaces where students, when they are taking a mask break, if it's pouring outside and we still want kids to be able to get outside, take a mask break, stand and have a snack. Obviously you can't run around, but at least it gives them an opportunity to stand up outside, take a break, take the mask off, have a snack and a break for 15, 20 minutes, and then come back inside. So, and then same thing when they're not being utilized for snacks or other breaks, then they'd be available classroom space for teachers to access.
Brian, are they a tent that has walls, right? They have zippers? No,
no. If it's with walls, it's an indoor space. So
okay.
The guidance now allows for up to 50% of the walls to be closed. we went with the straight, right? The value and benefit of being outside is being outside. So let's protect from the elements, but have that free flow air. And then
Okay.
so, but these are, again, these are not, these aren't, we did purchase some, like borderline easy up tents that were not designed for long-term.
Right.
All in, we've spent $45,000 on tents. So these are not, we didn't rent. The cost, we probably could have saved, what, 15, 20,000 by renting them. But at the end of the day, this is pandemic funding, and this gives us 11 tents that can be utilized. These are the tents that, is it a 40-inch spike, right? That's used to stake these things down with the nylon ratchet straps and everything. So these are the real deal. These aren't going anywhere. They're
You gonna keep them up through the fall, or what's the plan?
So I think we have to kind of figure out, they certainly would not be there for the winter.
Yeah.
But my understanding, and I don't know if Kyle, if you have more information, they're fire rated, they're wind rated. If we knew a hurricane was coming, we'd want to take them down. But other than that, they're designed to be up. I guess the question will be, is it worthwhile leaving them up all summer? We're going to be having quite a bit of extended summer learning throughout the summer at all the schools. So they'll be probably utilize great outdoor learning spaces all summer long as well. So
Yeah, get out of the sun too.
yeah, I don't anticipate them coming down until next winter. And then we have them, right? These aren't tents you say at 2 o'clock, hey, let's put the tent up and it's done by 3. But certainly for athletic events and other places, these will be, tremendous resources to have at the schools.
But Brian, are the teachers already committed to the summertime, to the process?
Nope. So we are identifying what the programs will look like now. Once we get all the students shifted back, right? The focus is a week and a half from now at this moment, but identifying the needs and identifying what the programming will look like. It'll be a blend of everything from in-school traditional in a classroom to out-of-school week-long intensive hands-on. Patrick Kelly, the principal at the high school, his former role as a STEM project, built a tiny house. And so they're actually trying to figure out how to get that going for this summer. And it's you stimulus money to buy all the upfront, the trailer, all the supplies. So it could be kind of STEM activities like that. There'll be remote opportunities for families. And so we've got all of the postings ready to go up now. But, certainly we generally have a large number. I would say there's usually, call it 30 educators who are involved in summer programming across the district for special education extended school year. There'll be opportunities of, for upwards of probably, I don't even know the number, 80, 100 individuals when you look at all the elementary schools and all the middle school and high school. So that would be, by the beginning of May, we'll have that information out to families about what's available.
I guess, Brian, that's my question. Sorry, Erica. Because what I'm hearing is, and again, I can usually respond in the way that I know to respond, is how are you going to deal with the regression, the academic regression? Of course, I've been very clear that the priority has got to be mental health and teaching these kids how to sit in their seats for as long as they have to sit in, because they haven't had to do that. So that's the priority. I'm very well aware of what happens with kids on IEPs, what happens with the regression, what you have to do. But, I would suspect that an incredibly high percentage of our kids will have some academic regression. So besides the summer, what are some ways that we're identifying the students in their regression after we have made sure that they're not anxious and they're able to sit and all the other stuff, which may take the rest of the year? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think we've said that throughout, that's the priority in getting students back. So the final 10 weeks are about reacclimating. I was watching an email string across the middle school today about teachers joking, but oh yeah, they're going to be middle schoolers again, right? So that's a gift, someone who wants to work with middle schoolers all day, every day. And so, when there's only half the students there, it's still a little odd. Everyone's a little on edge. And so you don't get the normal. With everyone there, it's going to feel a lot, it's going to feel a lot more normal. So you're going to deal with COVID plus all the normal 13-year-old behaviors. So, all of that is the focus, as well as assessing. We've done DIBELS and for math and ELA, especially, K through 8. So we have that data. We know that the reading and the literacy saw a lot less impact than the mathematics. We all know that when you don't do math, it goes away quick. So it's this, the final 10 weeks of school are about reacclimating, reassessing, and then looking to the summer. We absolutely need to keep our, I don't want to say this, our bearings, because it's going to be, we've had a lot of discussion about the fact that it's going to feel, everyone's going to feel compelled to hit the ground running and try and backfill as quickly as we possibly can. But that goes against the very thing that you just said, Ronnie, and that doesn't, focus on the mental health. So it's going to be a balanced approach. The summer is not going to fill in all the gaps. We're anticipating, we don't know this, but we've been told that the ESSER 3, if that's what it's going to be called, the American Rescue Plan. I know in the allocations, each of the member towns are getting between 1.8 and $2.7 million each. The district, if the calculation that we're told is roughly correct, could be another 1.8, $1.9 million. We're seeing that as that would be through September of 23. So that's through fiscal 24. We're seeing that pot of funds. There will certainly be other things, infrastructure improvements that we might need to do related to COVID, but largely about that mitigation. So get everyone back is priority number one, assess the needs, identify, and currently in the process of identifying that summer mitigation. And then as we're going through that process, once that's rolling, look to next year, because a lot of that can continue into the school year outside of the regular school day. So whether that's really intensive programs over the next 3 summers, yes. And then on top of that, additional programming that we can offer students. So, at the elementary level, it looks very different at the high school. At this point at the high school, it's about not just credit recovery, but it's about sophomores, juniors, and seniors needing to get credit for a course. It's very different than a gap in literacy skills and literacy development for a second grader. So we'll look different across the district, but that at this point, we still have ESSER 2 funding that's uncommitted, but the ESSER 3, we've largely talked about that as that long-term mitigation for the many unknowns.
So Brian, how are you going to assess the needs of the students? Are they doing the MCAS anyway? Because I know I heard talk about it. Then they're saying they're not going to. They are going to. There's pros and cons, but it's really.
Yes, we are.
It's up in the air.
Yeah, MCAS tells us nothing. I mean, I understand in the importance of a standardized testing for this year. MCAS isn't going to give us any meaningful information. So we use what's at K through 8 is called the DIBELS, dynamic indicator of blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get it. So we use DIBELS, and then we use iReady. So we use the iReady literacy, and I'm sorry, we don't use DIBELS. We use iReady K through 8, and then we use the DIBELS at several grade levels. So the iReady is a very extensive assessment we use for literacy and mathematics. And all students are assessed generally beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year. That's what we would call a formative assessment. So we assess and have instant results, and then that informs our instruction. MCAS, we take in the spring, we get the results in the summer, we do all the disaggregation, and so by the fall, we're ready to say, hey, this is some meaningful information 6 months later. That's not a helpful assessment. So I don't believe MASS, which is the Superintendent's Association, is putting a full court press on the commissioner to petition or Secretary Cardona, the new Secretary of Education, to not require the MCAS. He is a huge proponent of that. And here in Massachusetts, I think our Commissioner Riley would be okay with not doing the MCAS. Our Board of Education, starting with Chairman Pizer, is extremely adamant and a very strong believer in the MCAS as a I don't know what the right word is, compulsory. I mean, it is at the core, if you don't do MCAS, we're failing students, is a core belief of Pizer and several of the board members in the business community. So we're full steam ahead, right? At the high school, we're talking about in the next couple of weeks after April break, and then at the middle and elementary, it's pushed into later in May. So there is a chance perhaps that it could get completely canceled, but at this point, we've been told certainly do not plan on that because it is full steam ahead. So the tests were condensed. roughly half the amount of testing and the length of the tests. At the high school, it's still a graduation requirement. So those requirements are still there. So, but we have the iReady and Dibbles are our primary assessment tools that we use within the district for our own assessments to determine what's best for students.
So it's more like the school that it's the state that thinks that this is more or less important, right? More or less they want to see how one school is doing against another school, and maybe that's what the use of the MCAS is mostly for.
Yeah, I think yes. I don't think anyone would shy away from that statement. And in a given year, I can get behind it. I'm not a fan of standardized testing being the end all be all. I can understand it in normal times. And this year, they keep saying they've taken away the accountability piece. They've taken away all of those other pieces, but they just want it as an assessment tool, as a diagnostic tool. And our argument has been, well, it's not that. So then there's really no reason then.
Yeah.
And
Right.
the conversation ends and they say we're doing it anyway.
I can definitely tell you I have a sixth grader who does not really like iReady, but we make, I hear that term a lot, but they do use it. They use it throughout the year. Like it's not a once a year, like they're using it multiple times. So, and Ronnie, and you actually covered my question about the ESSER 3 or whatever, the newest stimulus money, but it sounds like it's going to come in where we thought right now, which will give us some cushion and room to make changes for next year. I had a question on how are teachers and staff, administrators, how are they doing it being able to get vaccinated, and how are they feeling about this full return of all the students? Just kind of a, what's the temperature?
Yeah, great question. So I would say the hardest one to answer is, how is everyone feeling about this return? I talk to people who are petrified. I talk to people who are, dear God, thank you. We've been waiting for so long. And I would say the majority are somewhere in between. Our discussions are, with our associations, our teachers and IA associations have been incredibly positive and incredibly productive. Paul Lees and Maureen Heffernan have been the two P&N members working with our educators. So of course there's angst, there's fear, but by and large, everyone has agreed. I think if we were to take a poll, just like everything else, it's 51-49, right? But I think that, the variance in between the polarized ends are much more measured. I think overall, everyone's excited to see students back and have everyone back together and have, at the elementary level, to have a complete classroom of 18 students or 19 students sitting with the teacher. But that's balanced by the concern. So as far as vaccinations, I had been working with Conley's in Ipswich, who's wonderful, the Alex and Mark, the brothers, and they tried, and right as we were getting ready, the state started pulling away and only providing vaccine to their large distribution site. So they were able to get some clinics for the senior centers in each of the towns. And then Marcus went and said all bad things about the state in the Daily News, and it got even worse for him. So our three towns, and then the Pentucket towns, Amesbury, Newburyport, Georgetown, formed the collaborative, the Lower Merrimack Valley Collaborative. I keep calling it consortium. They obviously now every weekend, I'm sure you've seen in the papers, they're administering 1,000 to 1,500 doses every day, Saturday and Sunday. They opened up after it became clear we weren't going to be able to figure out how to get a clinic in district. Most of our educators, when CVS came online nationally, our educators were very creative and found ways to, apparently it's 5:45, actually between 4:40 and 4:59, they loaded fresh ones. And if you're up that early and clicking refresh, then between 5:45 and 6:15. So they had buddy systems, and people were doing the click and refreshing. Oh, I got 2 spots, and texting and booking people. So last Saturday and this Saturday, this coming Saturday, 2 days from now, the Lower Merrimack Valley Collaborative opened up slots specifically for educators before the slots went live in the state system. They sent all of us the links. I had at the last survey about 130 who said that they were still hadn't booked through CVS or Walgreens or any other system. Several follow-ups after sending out those links to say, if you're still not able to get your appointments, let me know. I haven't heard from anyone. So I'm going Saturday for dose 1. And then when you leave, that's part of the state system. So as you leave from dose 1, you scan a QR code and you pick your dose 2. So I'd be out, 3 weeks. So my guess is between last week and this weekend, last Saturday and this coming Saturday, we probably had about 100 to 130 that participated there. And it actually might be higher because I know a lot of people had found a CVS down in Natick or drove out to Worcester.
Swampscott Stop and Shop was a popular one.
Right?
That's one that I've heard. And my friend was she's an orthopedic surgeon, but she was volunteering giving shots in arms last week.
Yeah. So a lot of folks that had them there canceled them and went and booked them in Amesbury. So at this point, I'm under the assumption that many have 2 doses. I've already talked to a lot of people who have both doses. Everyone by this Saturday should have at least 1 dose. I know that the high school, for example, they had their buddy system going and they have about 27 teachers that the first week, so I think it's like the 6th, 7th, and 8th of April, folks are going to get their 2nd dose. So obviously we had tried hard to do an in-district clinic so we could plan for a Friday. So the effects could be Saturday, Sunday. So it certainly we're gonna have to deal with that as they come up. But one of the reasons why we shifted the high school until Monday the 12th. So I would say at this point, it's certainly not the way I intended to get it out there. But thanks to the collaborative and the work of our 3 town health directors and the other 6, that certainly came together and is very positive. So
I know my son and I volunteered this Sunday to work it. So I was helping people with the QR and he was watching the clock and letting people leave after 15 minutes. I volunteer a lot. It was the most reinforcing I've ever felt volunteering. There wasn't a single complaint. And trust me, as a volunteer, you hear complaints all the time about everything. Not a single one. Everybody was thanking us. It went so smooth. I think my son had to deal with one person who wanted to leave before the 15 minutes. He's like, you can't keep me here. And he's like, okay, go. Other than that, it was amazing. It is going so smoothly at the Amesbury High School.
I'd like to backfill on what Ronnie said. I got my shot last Sunday. It was absolutely so well done. I had a physician retired from Boston, and it was probably one of the better things that I've ever seen in how well organized, but how friendly and streamlined. It was a really nice event.
Well, that speaks to certainly our 3-member towns, health directors and health departments, and then the other 6 towns. But it speaks to how this is all supposed to work. Because so this is my 16th year in the district office, and every year we drill for MEMA for Seabrook, and we refresh our plans for our hazard response and our where Newbury is the MEMA. What do you call it? EMD, Emergency Management Director. And so they have jurisdiction. So we do all those drills and the planning and dispensing. And when all of this kind of took a sideways turn and went to a private vendor, it changed, right? We would be and I get it, right? The supply is a problem that you can't solve that. But what you're seeing in Amesbury, the collection of the 9 communities, that's how it's supposed to be done, because it works when you hand it to the local communities to set it up and do it well. So
right. Yeah. I got my shot in Rowley, and they had it so. The first shot I thought went very well, but the second shot was even better. It was so smooth. Got into the church parking lot. We were inside the church. The guy was ready with the needle before I had my jacket off, so that we for the 15 minutes we were visiting, and we weren't ready to get up and leave. We were chatting with friends that we hadn't seen for a year.
It's old home week. Love it.
Yes.
Brian, if Alex gives you any trouble, he's my nephew, so just let me know.
Yeah. No, they were phenomenal. I mean, they were.
That's my brother's store, and they've run a nice. They've done a nice job over there for years.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and like I said, he saw a niche, and he's trying to fill it. And like I said, he's doing a hell of a good job.
Yeah, no, and we tried to keep it on the QT because Brian Blake was the superintendent in Ipswich, and there was others that had chatted with him and gotten bad graces, and we're like, no, we want to stay in your good graces, and this is so we had it going right up until the point where I
know, like I said, and that's where he's got his frustration.
Yeah,
I mean, he had a lot of things set up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he has quite a system.
Yep, he does.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, can I ask a question that's kind of maybe a little different, kind of within that academic spectrum? Do you guys have the ability to swap ideas and maybe stories with other school districts that are similar to yours, and how, I mean, is there any collaboration between school districts for swapping of information?
Oh yes, all day, every day. So
I think that probably, that network could be very, very important going forward.
Absolutely. And I think there's certainly, I think every, we'll say position, teachers obviously tend to collaborate within. For administrative positions, building principals, superintendents, assistant superintendents, business managers. So there's a MASBO listserv across the state for Kyle. For Dave, there's all the local consortiums have kind of job alikes. Superintendents have MASS. We have a North Shore roundtable that's just the North Shore. Assistant superintendents have a whole curriculum and instruction roundtable. So I would say on a daily basis, I have, I mean, no exaggeration, 40 emails from other superintendents in the North Shore roundtable. It's everything from where are you guys heading, right? You don't want to be the first, you don't want to be the last. So it's kind of where are you at with your plans, to, hey, how are you solving this? Someone just threw out today that they piloted a late start for high school at 8:30 and it went really well, and they're trying to stick with that, but then that messes with the Cape Ann League and start times and competition times. So yeah, everything. No one has done this alone, and it is the only way that any district has survived is by leaning on other people. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. Any other?
Gonna say any other questions for Brian?
I said I wasn't going to talk a lot.
I know. I'm not sure if we covered this before, but Brian, could you just talk a little bit about Lucinda and Dave leaving? Because I know those are kind of fairly big changes.
Yes. So Dave McGee will be leaving effective June 30th. And actually we are in the process I will be bringing a contract to the committee next week. I have a draft contract out to our final candidate. I'm not going to say the name in case the person says no. But I've taken a process. It's now been started in late January, and it was a very thorough process to vet this new candidate. And so we have a phenomenal person to step in when Dave leaves on June 30th. And then the Lucinda Ward is actually leaving to go work for the Department of Ed. So I think she might have some oversight over us. So I hope she leaves everything in good shape. But she's actually leaving sooner rather than later. She let us know in February. And so I don't know if Kyle you want to talk about, Kyle just completed that process.
Yeah, so
can I just say real quick for people who don't know, Dave McGee is the special education administrator and Lucinda Ward is our food services director.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So for the food service director position, we went through an interview process, 2 different rounds, and we ended up offering the job to Sarah Littman. She accepted. She'll be starting next Wednesday. She has a background working with the food service program in one of the hospitals in Boston, but actually it's been pretty clear throughout her career that her passion lies with school food service. She's a registered dietitian. She's finishing up her master's degree. She has a network or close contacts with other area food service directors. So throughout the interview process, it became clear that, or we saw that passion, and so we're thrilled to have her coming on board. I think she'll do a phenomenal job, and lucky enough to have some crossover there between Lucinda and Sarah for about a week, and then Lucinda, we've worked it. She's offered to give training after the fact as well. So very optimistic.
Yeah. So if anyone knows Lucinda, you'll understand when we say Sarah almost has as much energy as Lucinda, which is a tough act to follow. So
right,
high energy to high energy, which is needed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know there were, big changes, which on top of, bringing students back 5 days a week is a lot to have going on at one time. So.
Well, and that's Lucinda's the only change right now, right? So she's changing literally as we speak. Dave McGee's contract ends on June 30th. We'll switch over. Should also note that you'll see a posting for the director of technology. Apparently, ever since Kyle came, everyone's leaving. Anyone who is anywhere near retirement, this has helped them make the decision. So Deb Jones, our director of technology, is also retiring. She's this summer. So same thing. We're at that process, that search is open now, and we'll be conducting that process over the course of the rest of the spring here and have someone to replace her. We also, other names, Lita Bobrian, our HR payroll coordinator, she retired as of December 31st. I feel like there was someone else, and
I was just going to say Nicole and Elise would be the other two for Pine Grove.
Yep. So new principals. So Christine Nealand, the principal of Pine Grove, retired at the end. She let me know at the beginning of June, and she retired at the end of June. So Nicole was the interim principal for the start of this year, conducted a process late fall through early winter. And she was the top candidate after screening committees of 22 people. And then Elise Earls, who was a former teacher, is now the assistant principal at Pine Grove. I feel like there's one more shift.
Mike Estuccio.
That's right. Mike Estuccio came back. So Mike Estuccio was a teacher at Pine Grove School, and then he left and was a teacher Boston area, in Boston, was it? And then came back and is now the assistant principal at Newbury Elementary School. That's it, right?
He's a Triton graduate too. So
Triton graduate, yep. Mom's a teacher at the middle school, special education teacher. And then, so one other shift is we actually would never have thought this was possible. So pre-COVID, if someone had said, hey, can I work remotely? I would have said, no, not possible. So we all learned how much you can work remotely. And I would argue to say it is a lot more than when you're in person. But to deal with a family situation, our accountant, Karen Denon, who has been with us for several years, is absolutely phenomenal. She came to us and said, I have to resign. I have to move to Ohio. And at first we said, okay, let's figure it out. And we said, hey, can you work remotely just to the transition? And she said, of course. Then we said, could you work remotely? And so it kind of was what do you think? And so it's now been how many months, Kyle? 3-4 months?
Since January 1st. And it's working.
It's working.
Worked out really well. And as part of that, it's had us reevaluate some of our processes too, digitizing certain things. And so it's, Karen, like Brian said, Karen is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
So
we miss her in the office, but I just got an email from her today. One of the videos I sent out, she's like, "Oh, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while." So it's weird because sometimes it feels like you can call her extension and you can talk to her, and you just don't know she's in Ohio. But so it's certainly, there are obviously we can all list the things that we don't like about COVID, but there are certainly some silver linings in that it's caused us to rethink some of our assumptions. And I think, certainly our processes, like Kyle just mentioned, as far as our business operation. And I think there are aspects of our education that will never go back, that we've been forced to do things and think about things differently, and we will never not need our teachers and students in the same room. I want to make sure that there isn't anyone walking away thinking that Brian's going to propose remote school. Not at all. We need all of our teachers and all of our students in the same place. However, it has certainly broadened our horizons in the use of technology and some of the strategies. So, yeah.
The kids need it desperately too.
Kids need it.
We call those pandemic positives.
Oh, we've had.
Try to find them.
Yeah. I've mentioned this, Brian, to you personally too, is that the kids in the remote academy, the 6th grade, I am loving listening to them. They are phenomenal. Kelly Buckley is absolutely phenomenal in keeping them engaged. And it's been really like, they have not missed a beat. It's a testament to everybody in the district of keeping the kids going throughout this.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Erica. One of the things that I think was probably the most nerve-wracking for teachers is you've got 300 educators that are all of a sudden in everyone's home, right? So many parents know teachers are right at home in front of kids, but when they're with parents, that's just nerve-wracking. So it was a really hard transition. No one said no, but all of a sudden when it just dawned, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm like live in the living room with siblings and parents. That was hard. That was hard for teachers. But I mean, I love the fact that we've gotten an opportunity. I've heard more about the amazing things teachers are doing this year than in any other year. I mean, exponentially. I mean, multiples and multiples of the norm. And every single time I can say without fail, it's been something that teachers always do. And it's just that parents are getting to see it. So
we get to see it, and I don't get to see my kids how they behave in class. And it's great. My son, unfortunately, he shares the office with me, and there's times where my language is not high school appropriate for my business calls, and he's had to be like
upped our game as far as how to deal with naked people walking through the background and everything. Definitely, it's been. Glad all these aren't recorded, because there definitely have been some stories for the book someday. Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions on reopening plan? Anything academics, procedures, protocols, anything like that? Okay, and I'll just note, because I think we've talked about ESSER 3. We do still have room in the ESSER 2 grant too, and we set aside 200,000 of that for the summer mitigation. So that's essentially already kind of in a bucket, as it were. And we still have some extra funding there too. So even we never know when our grants are going to come through. So whenever it does, we'll be good in the meantime.
Sure.
That said, moving on to the finance side of it, I know the last time we talked about the budget was not too long before it was voted, but we did have some shifts after that. So I don't know if Brian's taking this or Kyle is.
Yeah, so I think take the same approach. I think we talked about everything that ultimately ended up in the final document. The only thing I think that changed was the wellness coordinator ended up in ESSER 2 as an initial funding. And part of that discussion was we're not sure yet exactly what we need. We have it as a wellness coordinator. It's not just coordination that we need. We need services. We need direct services with students. So the thinking now is Kim's actually working through that, getting the posting ready to go out the door to identify someone who has both capacities. And actually at this point, we have a hole in the middle school curriculum and schedule to actually have an opportunity to do some wellness instruction, which how phenomenal is that, as well as start that coordination so that we're ready to put those mitigations in place and interventions in place. But I think that will largely and likely involve other resources beyond just the coordinator. So that role right off the bat is going to be both a clinician or interventionist or educator and coordination. And then in the future, we certainly are going to have multiple years of ESSER funding to spend. But ultimately, I can tell you, I will say that to the 3 towns, that's going to be a commitment that we have to add into the budget. But in the short term, until we know what the number is, I can't tell you that we don't need 3 times that, right? I think we have a lot of work to do to identify short-term needs to deal with the social, emotional, and mental health challenges of all.
Denise, I'm on a meeting.
Back. How about we'll just mute Joe for him? And then totally lost my train of thought. And then what was I talking about?
Clinicians and wellness and
right. So we have to first deal with the interventions, and then long term, we know there will be long term and short term needs for those students. And then the second piece of this is that we're expecting new health and wellness standards from the state that haven't been updated since 1999. And we keep joking about this, a lot of things have changed since 1999. So we're going to have a lot of work to do to make sure we figure out not just what we teach, but how we teach that. Is that adding instructors? Is that embedding that within the current curriculum and teaching it that way? So yes, that was the big change. I think everything else that we had, I don't know if there were other changes or other questions about the budget. And we talked about, we haven't had a discussion around this table about, we are going to have a 1-month premium a premium holiday in July for our health insurance. It's the same thing. I believe Newbury and Rowley are both Maya Health, and the trust is giving a 1-month premium holiday this year. That's going to be to the tune of about 400,000 in savings. Had some discussion around the table. The problem is, if we passed those savings along to the towns this year with no changes to the budget, we would have to increase the budget by 400,000 next year. So Maya did it understandably the way they did. They didn't reduce our rates because that would have been long-term savings. They just increased our rates as they normally would, and then just gave us a 1-month premium. So it's only current year savings. So in our minds, that adds to our E&D balance, right? That's another opportunity we keep talking about needing to get that balance back to where it's sustainable, and where Moody's looks at it and says, all right, we'll get your bond rating back. So in the future, if and when we need to deal with something at the middle school, high school campus, we're not getting bad rates. So that's the approach we took with that.
How do you get 400,000? How does that number? Is that 1 day out of the 180, whatever, how many school days there is? And
no, it's a 1-month premium. So the premiums, so you pay our medical premiums. We spend about $6 million on medical. So that's a 1-month premium holiday. So for the month of July, Maya is just not going to bill us for our medical plans. So that's roughly, this year we had a half a month's premium holiday, and that was about 200,000 in savings, and that was offset by other costs for
why aren't they billing us? Because of COVID? Is that what's the reason why they're not?
Yes, they pull it out of the trust. That's the benefit of being within a trust. I forget the number they applied, but it's millions of dollars that they applied from the trust because they had short-term savings because of claims history and access to healthcare this year. And so they used money from the trust to give everyone a relief, but gave it as a one-time relief rather than, so our medical only went up 1.18%. So that's a huge win to start. And we're now going to offer a voluntary vision plan that will probably shave another 0.5%, which is another, how much, Kyle? 40,000 bucks?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's off of the rate. So that's long-term. So rather than Maya saying, okay, that 400,000 that you would have saved, we'll lower the rate and we'll take your rates down by 1%, whatever that number is. Then next year they would have been increasing on that lower rate. So they said, no, we're gonna increase your rates like they normally would, give you the premium holiday. They take money out of the trust to offset that loss this year, and then next year they start where they would have. So as a Maya, as a trust, Maya literally operates as a self-insured entity they have their own level of, all the contributors, and then they reinsure, just like we would if we were self-insured on our own, where we just collected premiums and paid bills as they came in. So I think, I don't know, Kyle, were there other, I don't think there were any other changes.
That summarized it perfectly. Yeah.
Should have let you talk. It probably would have been quicker. Sorry.
Yeah, because your rates been going up sometimes, like 10% or something for health insurance and stuff, for...
We haven't hit 10. We haven't hit double digits in
4 years, I think.
It's been a handful of years since we've hit double digits. We've been upper singles, but yeah, for when so my 16th year in central office, I remember when I first came over, we were 16, then 13, and it was those were crazy years. But we've been kind of mid to upper single digits pretty steadily for the last handful of years.
The prior year was around 7.5, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like it was like 8.6 the year before that. And then there was one year where it showed a 3% savings, but that was because we had a good year and we restructured the plans up to deductibles and did that kind of stuff. So Triton currently we offer a standard, $350 deductible, $700 deductible HMO plan, like a state benchmark plan. We offer a PPO, a higher cost indemnity plan that very few people take, only if they're living out of state, mostly retirees. And then we implemented this year a qualified high deductible plan. So that's where it's an HMO plan, but we contribute either $700 or $1,400 to an individual or family into a health savings account. So the premiums are lower. We take some of that savings, putting it into an HSA for the employees, but then the employees pay the first $2,000 or $4,000 out of pocket. Mm-hmm. So there are some people who that works for, because an HSA allows you to carry your money forward into the future. It's not like a flexible spending plan. However, if you are a family with kids in the younger years, that probably won't work out. You'll probably pay a lot of money. So those tend to stay on the traditional HMO. So we've done things like that to change the plans and the designs and offer other options to save money.
So I'll just note that the school committee has officially voted that the budget. So I know it's been certified to all the towns. So if there's anything that we can provide in advance of town meetings, I think for Salisbury and Rowley, that's the only thing that the district has on your town meetings. Newbury, I believe, will also have the regional agreement, because that was in the interest, this is my understanding, in the interest of having the town meeting be relatively short last year, they put that was one of the things, they took anything that was non-essential and kind of put it off. So I guess that's landing back on.
That's on the draft warrant. Alicia and also I know that because the town owns the school, there's also right now, I believe it's $100,000 on town meeting for roof for Newbury Elementary. That's on the draft.
We have the roof. We've done the assessment that the town did on that project, and that's just a school. They did an assessment on what was needed, and they've been putting money aside every year. And this year we have $100,000 going towards roof repairs.
Yeah, I know there's an envelope study a few years ago that kind of gave us a sense on the building, the pieces that the town is part of our capital, to keep that in mind.
I was hoping to, Brian, if you could clarify a little bit on PEG access funding, because at our last select board meeting, the newest select board member to the town of Newbury wanted to increase similar to what happened last year on the town meeting floor in Newbury. And Newbury hasn't been able to spend that money with Triton because of the legalities around the different municipalities, but I don't think it's quite clear to this select person. I was hoping you could clarify and lay anything that we can do to make it different.
Absolutely. That's a great question. We haven't talked about PEG access in a while. So another thing I'm pretty sure we've been talking about for my 16 years in central office is there have been many iterations of attempts to I guess, regionalized, for lack of a better term, the PEG, public education government. So this is cable television, the PEG access process. There was discussion at one point about that outbuilding that's out by the tennis courts, turning that into an outdoor studio. There was varied interests across the 3 towns. So ultimately, it's had its fits and starts across the last 15 years. The issue becomes, so we do as a district do not have the capacity to run a PEG studio, right? So we have Bob Lathrop, who is wonderful. He was a choral and music instructor by training, who was self-taught for TV video production and has done an amazing job, and we all get to watch VTV. All of the stuff he does beyond that is his volunteer time. So we've talked about, could we build a program, and whether that's Bob or add more, 2, 3 people. The only way to do that and have it be a district run effort is for us to embed it in the operating budget, which then is assessed and apportioned across the 3 towns, or have it as a standalone capital budget. So the issue then becomes, we don't have the ability as a district to say, do you want to pay Newbury? And if you do, then Rowley, do you want to pay? And if someone says no, that stops the process. So a separate capital budget is unanimous, needs all 3 towns. Anything in the operating budget needs obviously 2 of 3 towns. And I think we're all around this screen have always said, we want all 3 of our towns, right? We don't want to be in a situation where we have one of our towns forced into a situation where they're having to vote no. So the concept of having it being district driven is possible, but that can only happen. I guess the DCC might be a logical place for that to start or restart, is if there's interest in all 3 towns for combining those efforts. The alternative is what Newbury has done in past years. And I know there's legalities in regards to kind of last year's vote and the concerns about how that money is spent. I can tell you I have 0 expertise or understanding. That's certainly way above my pay grade in regards to how that money can be spent. But any town can certainly say, hey, we want to give you money for this purpose. So there has been, Rowley's bought little things here and there. Newbury, a couple of years ago, there was that motion and there was a large chunk of money. I don't remember the name or the amount. Last year, the amount was even larger, and that's been the legal challenge about what that can legally be used for. Salisbury has, obviously, I would not to, this is not to rate, but Salisbury has the most developed SCTV program, staff, vans, right? They're driving around town, streaming things live. So the issue isn't, do we want to take the money? I can firmly and confidently say, anyone who wants to give us money, we're happy to take it. The issue is, if we're driving the bus, bad pun, it has to be the only way we can assess that is through our budget or capital budget process, which means all 3 towns have to be on board with those expenditures. So if it were going to be something that was funded through PEG money and it was running an educational channel out of Triton, I think there'd be a lot of us who would love to have that discussion, but that would have to mean that Newbury, Rowley, and Salisbury all want to take their money and fund the district. Everyone calls it the channel, right? It'd be funding the structure that would allow us to produce all of that programming and scheduling and what have you. So, yeah.
So I guess my clarification that I need is absence an agreement and absence that additional capital budget you're talking about, or a line item budget. One town cannot just hand over money to the district.
So if it's town initiated, the town can hand us money and we can spend.
If
the issue is, I can't tell you whether that's legal or not, right? I'm just, if we get money from a town for a purpose, that's from a district perspective, that doesn't violate the regional agreement or anything. However, my understanding, and again, that's a town council issue about what it can be used for. that really isn't within the purview of the district to be able to determine that.
But Brian,
So hold on.
I'm sorry.
Is it the source? So I think there's two things coming here, is that if Newbury wants to take, and this is where there's some clarification, if we want to take $50,000 from free cash to give to the school, that is between the town and the district. But I know that with the PEG money, that has to be used for specific, there's rules around the town spending that. So it's coming from the, like, when we identify that we want to use the PEG money to give to Triton for this piece, there's two different pieces of legality in there. One is whether or not we can use the PEG money for something that's not in just our town. That's one legal piece that I don't know either. And then also it's that part's sticky. It's difference of where it's coming from.
Yeah, so the person who is the entity that has the funds and is expending them has the burden of proving that they're expending them
spending them on the right reason.
So if we ran a PEG studio and it was $500,000 and we were getting the assessment from the towns, we don't allocate funds from the town, so it's just town funds coming into the district. For us, it's a public assessment. It's a general straight term. We spend the money on all the way that we outlined it in the budget. If the towns, right, so there are things where the town of Salisbury has spent on Salisbury Elementary and Pine Grove and Rowley for Pine Grove and Newbury for Newbury. Generally, all of the expenditures for PEG have been coming, the check, if you will, is literally written from the town. So the expenditures for, I don't remember what the project was, the microphones and cameras in the library where the school committee meetings will again someday be held, all of that, we facilitated that whole process, Bob Lathrop and all the vendors. The checks were written, if I'm not mistaken, those checks were written directly to the vendors. So then it's the town of Newbury's funds. The town of Newbury's accountant and attorney is the one who says, I can confirm that these went to this allowable expense through PEG. And I don't know all the laws, but we have certain funds, funding streams or revenue streams that are very restricted. PEG is a very restricted.
That's what we're understanding.
So real quickly, Erica, first of all, you can't take free cash, okay, because this is PEG money, which is not tax money. Okay.
It's been
paid for by Comcast. Okay.
Mike, I understand. What I'm saying is that if I was giving an example of how money could be given, listen to me, please, on how money can go from the town to Triton to support the TV and that initiative, which I believe is what you're trying to do, is get the funding to the school,
so,
correct?
So the other question I have is, though, we did it with $50,000 2 years ago. Why couldn't we do it with
you probably didn't do, we didn't, I don't know, but it was voted at town meeting.
It was voted at town meeting. We got a town vote and the money went to Lathrop's program because I was working in Lathrop's program then, and I saw the good it was doing.
Okay, Mike, you're mistaken, Mike. That money did not go for any programming.
No,
that money went for a TriCaster system.
I know that.
It went for specific things that were benefits to Newbury.
That helped the kids in Triton because they used the TriCaster for football. They used it for if they wanted to do something in the audio visual. So yes, they used it for Triton.
So,
okay, I don't give the kids, if the Salisbury money, the Salisbury kids, the Raleigh kids, I want our kids, and if the Salisbury kids and Raleigh kids can benefit from it, it's not tax money. It's meant to go for public education.
But the difference is the TriCaster system, legally, anything that comes out of the town of Newbury the town of Newbury writes that check, like Brian is saying, from our town accountant. The TriCaster system, the programming couldn't air on the Newbury channel without that TriCaster system. So that's why that was an allowable use.
Alicia, I've been working in the studio for 5 years.
Let me finish. let me finish. If that money was given to Triton for curriculum or programming, it would
wasn't.
not be an allowable use.
It wasn't.
That's the difference.
It wasn't.
It was written to buy equipment, is what I'm
Right.
understanding from
It was.
Leisha. Is that correct? So
Yeah.
it was an allowable expense of the town, allowable for the town to use the PEG money to
Out of
buy
those funds.
that out of those funds.
Yeah.
It never went to Triton to pay that bill.
No.
It went
So
from
some of the
Newberry,
things-
right? Newberry paid for equipment.
Correct.
Yeah, so that whole system in the library was paid through Newberry.
Newberry, right?
But my understanding of the way it worked was because it was literally, it was cameras, cabling, mounted cameras, mobile TriCasters. The TriCaster is the system that makes it all happen. Wireless microphones. It was equipment that allowed primary use was for the school committee. And because that was all part of school committee, it wasn't curriculum, it wasn't programming. Do we use it? To Mike's point, of course, right? It's mobile, and so we use it all over the place. The discussion for the money that we were talking about this past year was, we don't have anything else that I can argue that it's for school committee to make it that allowable expense, because it's primarily going to be used, it would be used for programming, and that was where the last discussion I had, things got hung up.
So Brian, real quickly, after that school committee, after the town meeting last year, when we gave them 90, I think it was 95,000, okay, and they got hung up, why couldn't we buy things like a green room and things like that that would make the whole process professional for those kids?
But it's not, because that becomes programming, right?
A green room versus, what's the
Right,
difference?
so if we
between-
were going to do, if we could somehow, maybe this is a school committee question, if the school committee is willing to have their meetings all over the world and just pretend that behind a green screen, all of a sudden, oh, look, we're meeting in Malaysia. So, right, so it's all of the stuff that that was purchased, I think it was 50,000 2 years ago.
Right.
Literally for school committee broadcasting meetings that were going to the Newberry subscribers. So that was why it was allowable. We don't need anything else in the library for the school committee. So the rub is that while yes, that is all beneficial to the kids, it's used far more often for kids than it is for the school committee. The primary purchase was school committee. Setting up a studio, a VTV studio, there's no argument to say that that's primarily for a public meeting to be able to be held. That's clearly in the camp of, that's 100%, 95% for kids in programming.
Right. But the question would be, if the money from cable, from Comcast, is meant for education and government, why couldn't it be used for a studio for the kids? Because it is for the channel. It's going to be on channel 8 in Newbury. It is for our channel.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I have to say, I don't know. That's a
I don't either, and that's where the frustration level lies with Jerry and I.
Yeah.
Because it's been sitting there and it's still in an account waiting to go to Triton.
Yeah.
Okay, and like I've never been in a time where Triton is going to say, "Oh, we don't want that money yet because we need it.
Yeah.
The kids need it, and it's
Right,
not tax money."
I fully agree with you there. I mean, I don't think there's any argument that it's not. It's the subscriber's money, right? When I pay Comcast bill, way too much.
Right.
That's going into a pot, and that's available for the towns to use. I guess the only thing I would say is of course we would take the money if it was legal for the town to give it to us, but I don't know how I can add to the discussion when it's been deemed to not be legal.
Okay, so we get some work to do legally.
So my hope is through this DCC committee is to maybe work towards, and maybe Kyle can help with this, work towards some kind of a capital budget for the technology piece for this with the 3 towns. And it would have to be an agreeable use with Salisbury and Raleigh so that we can.
Would that change the ability to use the funding?
No, unless we revert the funding back to free cash, then we can do it that way.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know, it would have to go back to free cash. It would
you-
have to, right
you
now,
could-
the way the Newbury manages the monies is it's encumbered in a specific account for PEG access. And that is kind of the issue, because it's reserved in that way. It's got to be very specific with how that money can be spent. So I think one of the things that I've mentioned to the town administrator is to maybe, we've gotten several legal opinions on this, but I think we need to go to a PEG person, especially the guy that helped us, the attorney that helped us negotiate the contract with Comcast. Maybe he can give us an opinion, but I mean, the DOR came down and stopped it. So I can't see how it can possibly.
But if we put it in free cash, it's not fair to the the Comcast payers of the bill, because it's not taxpayer money. It is PEG money.
No, but if we put it in free cash.
But you
we
can't
put
do
it
that.
toward the district.
It's because people are gonna say, my next door neighbor doesn't buy Comcast, so I don't want my money being, we keep it in the same channel and put it to the place where it's supposed to go.
Right, that's what
The legal
conversation
hiccup.
outside
It's
of
a conversation. I think that there's
Yeah.
and I don't want anybody to think that I disagree with, I very much agree that if we can make the program at Triton stronger, and it needs funding, and there is money to fund it within a will and money to fund it, I very much want us to do it. It's whether or not I don't understand the legality piece. I definitely would support us looking into that and getting the legal opinion, because I think what we're at now is that, yes, in terms of the words that are used, education is part of the PEG money, but it's not an easy transfer from, especially when we have a regional agreement.
Yeah.
So it may be frustrating, but it's not for lack of wanting to do the right thing.
But Joe
It's
McDonough's, okay.
We want to do it and we want to get money to go there, or we want money to go to that program. I don't know if it can be as you want it to be, that direct loop. I don't think that's right now. None of us can answer that.
Well, Joe McDonough says there are regional school districts.
The districts have been municipal districts have been kind of meeting this issue as well with like ESSER funding, because that can only be used for specific things. So that they're trying to purchase for their districts, and that's becoming an issue because of the limitations on the ESSER grants. My suggestion is, because I think, you know, it is right here to involve Salisbury and Rowley in these discussions, is that maybe resolve the legality issue first, and then we meet monthly, typically through the end of, you know, the school year, and hopefully, you know, next month or whatever, come back, and if the legalities can be figured out by then, have that larger conversation about what it looks like for the district. But I don't think until you resolve that funding question, and like I said, I know districts have been fighting with this over the ESSER funding, that you can really have that big conversation.
Larissa, real quickly, Joe McDonough, who has worked in this industry for over 30 years. Okay,
Yeah.
He said that there are other regional school districts that are taking PEG money and using it in their schools. So
There has to be a regional agreement. There has to be a with all the towns. It can't be.
So Joe McDonough had told me a while ago that the Algonquin School District was one that he believed he had a contact there, and I had asked him to reach out to the Algonquin District and let me know what their regional agreement was, and he dropped the ball. I haven't heard anything from him, so I don't know if he found out that it couldn't be done or what. But
I'll talk to him tomorrow for you.
He was supposed to follow up with that. I told him I would go, and I haven't heard anything from him.
And I can reach out to the superintendent if we've got some examples. I mean, I think the key here is if DOR says to stop, stop, because they've made our lives miserable, right? They don't exist. They don't exist just to make people's lives miserable. However, they are not shy about making lives miserable. So if it's not a legal use and it means convincing DOR or getting on the right side with DOR, we just want to proceed, because they have the ability to come in and undo things when we're well down the road. So I would say that. I don't. But I like the idea of getting some legal clarity. And then, I mean, if there's interest with the 3 towns in funding some kind of mechanism, and each town decides how they fund it, whether they use their PEG money or general money, I think it's a great discussion to have. Certainly lots of opportunity, and certainly it's a great opportunity for kids, and gets all of the programming out into the communities. So.
I had to look up Algonquin it's a high school. It's in Northborough, Southborough Regional School District.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, so I don't have any contacts there. I don't know if you do, Brian, but if there are other, I mean, I have school committee contacts all over the place, and I actually have Northborough, Southborough's regional agreement as well. I mean, we can do some digging in the resources that we have, but it would take some strong leads, because there are, when you count in the VOTEX, there are 87, I think, regional school districts. So trying to go through them all and find out how each one is doing it is a tall order.
Yeah.
You really need a place to start.
53 academic regions.
Yeah. Well, and VOTEX on top of it. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot. So yeah, if you want to funnel those over, we can do some digging too. But I think the funding side of it needs to be resolved first.
I'm pretty confident that we can't do the way that it was. I think the intent on town meeting floor was good, but I don't think we can legally do the way that it was done.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
I just asked, because I know this has happened before, that should this conversation be had, and it said that that needs to come through the general fund, please don't amend our budget on the town meeting floor. Please don't amend our budget.
I wouldn't do that.
An amendment's a no vote. Just remember that.
Yeah, it's no vote, right? Which just sets us back. And be it well intentioned, you could say we're going to throw 50,000 more into the general fund. It's a no vote. So well intentioned again. Please don't do that. So, anything else before we go? No. All right. I totally whether we have another date set or not. I think we did set another one. Yeah, just scanning real quick. Nope, TBD. So looking at April, I know there are town meetings toward the end of April, and there's also April vacation in there. Do we want to pull it in a little earlier and look at maybe the 15th? Or we could look out into May and end up, somewhere around the 6th or the 13th of May. I think from the town meetings that I've seen, they're all toward the beginning of the ones that are in May. So what's people's preference? Do you feel like we need to come together again before town meetings? I assume if you need things on regional agreement or budget, you'll reach out in the meantime, but.
Our town meeting is April 27th.
Yeah, and I think you guys are the earliest one.
Salisbury's the latest, right? When are you guys running?
May 17th.
May 17th.
Yeah.
Wow.
Rowley's is the 10th, I believe. The date I was given by the town clerk. So do we want to aim for after town meetings? Is that the best way to do it? So get you guys past that. I mean, we can even go out farther and say essentially that we're not meeting in April, and look out at going to the 20th or even as late as the 27th if you want to do that. Does that work? You want to look at the 20th, May 20th for the next DCC meeting?
Works.
Yeah. All right. Aim for May 20th at 6:30 then, and I'll get a note up on that. All right. Anything else, Brian?
I do not.
And it's still going to be Zoom, right?
Yeah, I assume so. We've looked at the library to hold meetings, but it's difficult down there. The best solution we could come up with was setting the board up in rows, which makes it really difficult to run as, just speaking as chair. I think I'd have to be sitting in the back row and looking at the back of everybody's heads so that I could see hands go up and things like that and be able to call on people, since we're all supposed to be 6 feet apart and facing in the same direction, and that would have to be facing towards the cameras to be captured on the wall. So you know, I think we haven't had that conversation recently, but when we last had it in the fall, it was, you know, things kind of need to shift and change a little bit before we can meet down there again.
Haven't they? I mean, it goes to 3 feet right now.
For kids.
Oh, I mean, Salisbury's been live since September, so I guess that's just, we've figured out how to do it, but yeah. So much easier.
Yeah.
So you guys are holding your meetings inside?
Oh, we've been inside, all of us, again, since September.
Yeah.
We haven't.
Newbury's not been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We potentially
Is Raleigh, are you guys inside in Raleigh?
No.
Yep, we even had signing license. We were all there and people came in and we had them all line up 6 feet down the hallway and came in and yeah, we've been live since September.
Congratulations.
We'd have to put, we have 14 people who usually come, which is a tall order when you're talking about 6 feet. That makes it hard. Brian and Bob and I spent a morning in the library setting out tables and YouTube feeds and the Zoom session and everything else and trying that out. And it's just, could we make it work? Yes. Could we efficiently run a meeting? I don't think so. And that's where the thing has been, is that I'm not personally, as chair, I'm not willing to sacrifice the function of the meeting just to say that we're in person. So yeah, I guess we'll plan on a Zoom meeting, and that would be the thought, especially because this group can get big at times as well. And we never really know in advance whether it's going to be 7 people or, 20 people.
What's the date for that meeting, May?
Yeah, May 20th. And I think we'd aim for 6:30 again. I think I've heard from people that they tend to like that a little slightly earlier meeting hour rather than a 7 o'clock. Yeah. All right. Excellent. Well, like I said, let us know if you need anything in between budget, regional agreement, whatever is needed on that side. And, we'll keep you updated as things go on. I try to, as the important stuff happens, make sure that gets out to you. And as always, all our meetings are in public, so you're welcome to come and hang out in those as well. If you have any questions, don't feel free to reach out, and otherwise we'll see you in May.
Okay.
You all.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.